All right, hey there, and welcome to this episode where we're going to talk about the fear of losing control. Now, when it comes to psychological stress and anxiety, right, a very common fear or theme, right, with a lot of fears is this idea of what if I snap and lose control and do something that is completely uncharacteristic of me, right, or something I would never normally do. Now, this plays out in a variety of ways, right? So, there's no way I could list every single thought that people have or kind of theme people have about losing control. I mean, this could be, as simple as I'm driving down the road, and what if when I'm driving, I just don't turn at the turn and I just go right off the road or right off the cliff, right? What if when I'm holding my baby, I just lose control and throw the baby, right? These are, and again, and the thing that I want to really reiterate here is these fears are fears that are completely uncharacteristic of the individual, and they've never acted on these behaviors. Okay, so this is not like an impulse control behavior. It's a fear of losing control, right? It's not like an impulse control problem where they do this stuff. It's a thing where the person literally just has these thoughts about the feared event of that happening, right? And again, this is, going back to the idea of psychological stress. What is psychological stress? Well, we have different types of stress that we can experience, right? We have acute danger, right? Like a lion coming at me, right? That's an acute danger that's happening right now, and that's going to produce a stress response. We also have psychological stress. Now, the thing about that is that our brain has the capacity to create these futuristic events, right? And then we actually respond to them right now like they're happening, like they're actually dangerous, right? And that response, right, then drives us to do safety behaviors, right, to keep ourselves safe from that event. The problem is that then reinforces that thought was actually dangerous, so then our brain keeps producing that thought. And that's the loop that people get caught in. Right. And that's why, at Restored Minds, we teach very specific processes on how to not get caught in that loop. I mean, that really is the struggle, because, the thing that's important to remember with these fears of losing control is what you're afraid of doing is never the problem. Right. I mean, and that's so important to understand that. Right. The problem is that you're getting caught in this loop about worrying about that. Right? Does that make sense? Because we think that the initial surface thought is the problem, right? So what if I snap and, let's say, drive my car into, off a cliff, right? When I'm driving, just impulsively, right? I just swerve the wheel and then go off. The problem is that if I think that that's a problem, if I think that is the problem, what am I going to do? Obviously, right? I'm not going to drive, or I'm going to be afraid of driving. I'm going to have other people drive. I'm going to do all these behaviors around that. But the thing is that driving is not actually the issue. What the issue is that these thoughts are popping up and they're creating the stress response, and then you avoiding or doing anything that reinforces those thoughts keeps you stuck in that loop. And when you're stuck in that loop, what happens is your life gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And that's universal for almost any form of struggle with anxiety, right? Panic attacks, social anxiety, right? OCD, phobias, right? I mean, and PTSD, right? The more and more we think that the content of our thought is the problem, the more and more we're going to respond to it and do behaviors that are going to revolve around that. The problem is that keeps us in the loop, which then limits our life. And so really understanding first and foremost that that concept between ego-syntonic and ego-dystonic thoughts, that ego-syntonic thoughts are thoughts that align with who you know yourself to be. Ego-dystonic are thoughts that are the opposite, right? First, what we want to do is we want to separate ourselves from these thoughts and realize that those thoughts aren't us, right? We're the one experiencing those thoughts, right? And I go super in depth to this in our Taking Back Control training, right, over at Restored Minds. But the idea is that we want to begin to diffuse from those thoughts, and then we want to begin to respond the correct way to those thoughts, right? And so, if this is something that you struggle with, trust me, I know how extreme these thoughts can be sometimes. And I also know how much they can limit a person's life. And so if this is something you struggle with, this episode is really about just educating you on the actual thoughts themselves, right? It's not really about like how to respond to them, right? That's going to take obviously more education, and we really teach the skill sets over, in our programs at Restored Minds, to the T on that, right? So, but in this episode, I really wanted to go into the idea of like just what are those, right? What are different types of those, right? And again, they can go, the spectrum of these thoughts can range from anything, right? Violent and sexual thoughts and all sorts of stuff, right? But the thing is that it's so important to remember that the content is not the problem, right? The problem is that loop that you get caught in. So, if you find yourself struggling with this, we have some resources down below in the notes that will take you over to our site where you can download, different PDFs. We also have additional, trainings that will expand upon this for you. And so, we really would encourage you to check this out because, again, the thing that I really want to you to know is that the problem with a lot of these is that people suffer in silence. Right, and they don't tell anyone, and their life just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is something that you can recover from, right? This is something that you can break free from. It really is just about understanding it from a completely different perspective. So, if this is something you struggle with, again, please check out those resources. And again, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And I hope you guys have a great week. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you found it helpful, chances are someone else will too, and we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing and also sharing this video on your social platforms. Also, if you're looking for additional help, we have some resources right down in the links below to help you on your journey. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you soon.